Hello, and welcome back to the Point 99 podcast. I hope you've all had a wonderful week since the last episode, whether you were training, eventing, or taking it easy. Talking of the last episode, and the question I put to you all, I'm pleased to say, well, it's gone down a treat. We'll be getting to that just before we welcome our guest for episode 7 to the show, Saerah Homer, better known to many as Saerah_runs, but all in good time. Before we get to that, I want to cover something I usually say at the end of the show. As over the past few weeks, we've seen a steady increase in listener figures. Numbers have never been something that has driven the production or delivery of this specific podcast. As long as a couple of listeners are enjoying what they hear, then that's good enough for me. For anyone who may be tuning in or has tuned in for a recent guest and has enjoyed what they've heard, decided to stick around and join us once again, I appreciate your commitment. Those amongst the regular listeners should already know how much I appreciate the support, but if not, there we go. I really do appreciate you all. If you do enjoy the show, or any podcast for that matter, could I please ask you to consider dropping us a rating, a short review on your podcast listening platform of choice if it supports that sort of thing, or a follow on social media, and a share doesn't do any harm either. These are all small things that can make a massive difference to each and every podcast that cost nothing other than maybe a few minutes of your day. That being said, I better get on with the show. First off, and as always, the Point 99 podcast is a running podcast created by runners for runners. If you're new to running or the podcast, we hope to have topics, discussions, and guests that will help you along whatever path your journey is taking. For any seasoned runners or listeners, maybe some stories that will have you empathizing with our experiences and predicaments. Whether it's lessons we've learned during our own journeys, embarrassing stories, or heartstring pulling moments, we hope you'll stick with us while we try share some good vibes, motivation, and positivity. And hopefully we can have a laugh along the way. It is shaping up to be a bit of a packed episode today, but I'll do my best to try and cover as much as possible in a compact time frame. If time isn't allowing, we'll see how we get on. First up, and briefly on my own running. This week has been a lot better. I managed to drag my sorry self out for at least 3 runs last week, and it set me up a treat for this week. I found a lot more motivation in getting out, even in the rainy, freezing conditions, to finish the year on a high. It is difficult getting the head around the idea of going out in the pouring rain, especially when the temperatures are a little bit lower, but that's what it's all about. It's about mind over matter, or matter over mind in that case, and just getting it done. So far, it's not the tally of mileage I was hoping for at the end of this year, especially as it approaches, but I do have to remind myself that I had a few injuries early on in the year, and that held me back just a little bit. So, I'm taking the positives. I'm now thinking about all the successes I've had this year. Mileage is just a number at the end of the day. It doesn't really mean anything. So hopefully I can just remember all the successes and focus less on self-pressure and more on all the good things that have happened. On to the community, however, and boy, have you guys been busy. There are a few too many people to maybe shout out for one of the main events I saw dominating the social stream over the weekend and the start of the week, being the run-through event at Alton Towers. I was originally planned to drive down and take part myself in the half marathon distance and potentially have met a few of the What the Fartlick lovelies, but various life's obstacles got in the way and stopped that from happening. Maybe next year I'll get down. We'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Hopefully anyone who was in attendance though had a great time all around. The photos certainly looked great with plenty of smiling faces, which we love to see. North of the border, and it was an equally busy affair with a couple of events across the country. I'll undoubtedly have missed someone or an event, but we will rattle through a few of the names and places to see if we can't give you all a pat on the back for this Friday morning. First up, we have the Newton Roadrunners 10-kilometre race, and we have two quite significant PBs to kick us off from Nikki Sheridan and Stuart Rowan, better known as Nick Nack Mara Runs and Stu Runs a Lot. It's been fantastic to follow Nikki's journey recently. She's had 3 weeks in a row of PBs and is going from strength to strength. And the same with Stuart. It was fantastic to see him wearing the Newton Roadrunner colours for the very first time. Definitely suits the black and yellow. But he's been giving it some serious distance in recently. I think he's got an event coming up. I can't say off the top of my head what that event is, but I'm sure we will find out very, very soon. But both of them, fantastic PBs. Big congratulations to you both. We also had Sam Eddington there. She got a PB for the year in the distance, which is, again, massive congratulations, Sam. Grant Kerr, Jace Wood, the Edinburgh runner, Elise X 26.2, Thomas Stewart TS runs, and Elise Running Diaries. They were all in attendance. As I say, undoubtedly have missed somebody or a few people. As always, I apologise. Let me know if you want me to make any amendments there. From Newton Roadrunners events to a Newton Roadrunner themselves and the Davaway 50k and our friend Ryan Miller at Scottish_runner, who we shouted out at the end of last week's episode. Now, Ryan went and absolutely smashed the event and covered it in a few different videos along the way. He did have a roller coaster of emotions, but ultimately he bagged himself the event distance and a cracker of a medal. But he was also joined by a previous guest of his at the event, Running Mum Leanne, who is one of the Brooks Run Free, Run Happy crew. I think that's what it is, Run Happy crew. And also Helen.running.mum. We also had Gemma, this dietitian runs, I believe her name is. So it's been fantastic to see the content from those guys. I am thinking that might be a potential for next year. It looks like a fantastic route. And again, we'll see what happens and see what other events I end up signing up for. Across the pond, our lovely regular listeners, TJ and Patrick, were both in action as well at the Veterans Day 5 and the Rocky Run, respectively. I believe that was Patrick's first event since Copenhagen. Could be wrong there. Pretty sure I am not, though. So it's great to see the lad back out, getting it done once again and making strides after, unfortunately, having lost his run streak through a medical condition. Right, last week's question then, and the response that you have been so fantastic with. What supplements do you take on a regular basis for your running or fitness lifestyle? We got a good mix of answers from the straightforward I, no, and those wishing to know a little bit more to boost their knowledge, straight through to a bit of a list from a few other people. Kicking things off, we are going with the not specific to running, DC Born to Run, who takes vitamin B12 and D to supplement their plant-based lifestyle. That was, however, echoed by Curly Steph X's response with B12 vitamins, multivitamins, vitamin D to support their vegan lifestyle, and also from both of them to help their winter defense. Ben, the Barefoot Daddy, takes Pag Stack. I had to check this one out and I'm pretty sure I got the correct thing. Ben, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure from what I saw, it's a combination of natural extracts and multivitamins. And then finally, a few of the lists combined here. We had a mixture of folks coming back with omega-3, collagen, glycosamine, electrolyte tabs for hydration support and the nutrients that they contain, 369 oil, cordyceps, de-stress, ashwagandha, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Not forgetting the additions that I had, the cracked black pepper, the turmeric, and magnesium. It was great to hear that off the back of the question as well, it's prompted a few of the listeners to have a look at their own supplements and things that may help support their running and fitness. As with anything, however, if you are serious about getting into supplements or you have any questions, I'd always recommend speaking to a specialist or your doctor, especially if you're not quite sure what's best for you or what might actually benefit you, or if you need to take it at all. Now on to this week's question before we get to the fabulous guest, Saerah Homer. So this week, I want to give you all the opportunity to shout one another out. Specifically, those in the community you don't scroll past or someone who you feel doesn't get enough of the attention or praise and you want to shine a spotlight on them. No matter your reason, you don't have to tell me your reason. I'll shout at the person and I will also shout you out while I am at it. But talking about shouting out inspirational figures from the community, let's get to this week's always inspirational guest. This lady is an absolute machine and a daily source of inspiration and motivation. She's had her trials along the way, but has come back stronger than ever, with personal best times dropping at every event she runs, which stand testament to that. It's an absolutely fantastic story that she's got. I fully encourage you to listen to it all. So let's hear from the lass herself, Saerah Homer. My guest today is more than a little bit inspirational. And being the humble, kind and caring person that she is, I know she'll wholeheartedly try and play that down. Inspirational is also perhaps an understatement. This lady is quite honestly something else entirely. Having been in a serious sledging accident in early 2020, this absolute Wonder Woman fought back to overcome broken ribs, scapula, fractured spine, punctured spleen and the lungs to not only run again, but casually smash out the Glasgow to Edinburgh Ultra in under 9 months. It doesn't stop there, however, as she's continued to go from strength to strength, demolishing personal bests after personal best, and reaching the pinnacle of many runners' bucket list, a Boston qualifier and finisher medal. I've had a decent amount of help from good old Uncle Lee on this one. Control Alt Del Uncle Lee for as my guest was at a loss of what to include in her pre-interview biography. She's that humble, but let's get on with her chat and welcome the wonderfully amazing Saerah_runs Saerah Homer to the show. Did you like that intro, Saerah?
You're right. That was just as embarrassing as you said it would be.
I know you too well. I did like the chuckle there with the Uncle Lee.
I know. I think that he's Uncle Lee to a lot of people.
It's taking I think that nickname. So he likes it at least. But
he'll at least he'll have to check that he can change his Instagram handle though before we can make it official.
You'll have to just have a second one. A second Instagram handle where he has photos of himself and all of his nieces and nephews.
I know. Well, maybe they'll have you can only upload 10 photos, so I think he might be struggling. But I'd hope that we'd make the cut anyway.
I would hope so too. You've had a great week though.
Yeah, been a pretty good week. So it was two weeks ago now that the Scottish half happened. So I have been not doing that much running for me, which always leaves me pacing about a little bit. So it's been a good week, but I think I've probably annoyed a lot of people in the process.
I've been 2 weeks for when we're recording, 9 weeks, 9 weeks prior for when it comes out. Yeah.
Is it? Everyone's going to be seeing me in my next taper by this point, so it's probably still accurate. You're probably the opposite, aren't you? Because you're just in your taper now as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I would hope if anyone is stewing from how rapid you've been recently, that they by 9 weeks later they've calmed down by then.
I don't think anyone's going to be thinking that.
Yeah, no. By the time this comes out, I might juggle some episodes around because I know one of the other guests that we've been speaking about before recording is less than happy with his recording, so maybe we'll juggle them around and give him some time to re-record. So no, at the moment you're 9 weeks ahead, but it could be
Right.
4.
Wait, so is that a Christmas episode? I think that would be, I think we could make a Christmas special.
Yes, it's close to. Actually, I have a little black book with everything in it now. Not a weird black book. So this would be the 17th of November.
Is it?
But it could be the 27th of October at this rate because of a re-record. But no, you've had a great week, and you've had a great run as well. I mean, we're going to get round to that, but you're still flying high, still ecstatically.
Still flying high, but in that way, well, I'm sure that you get it as well, where you're like, yeah, but I could do more.
Yeah.
I feel good. It went well, but I could do more.
Do you feel like it almost feels like it's not real, like you didn't do it, but at the same time, like I could go even better than that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's that part of you that thinks, it wasn't so long ago that I would see someone who did like the time that I did and think that person, they're not real. They're one of the ones who everyone looks up to, but you never actually get there. And then you see yourself doing that time and you're like, oh wait, that actually was me. And I did do that time. The clock on the top of the banner isn't lying to me. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, but I got this far. And if, I train at a slightly faster pace, or I do this like slightly different thing, or you just have that little bit more experience, you're like, yeah, do you know what? I could bring it down a little bit more and a little bit more.
I think we're both quite similar in the respect that when we get a personal record, a personal best, we go through phases of getting in quite close succession, and we're usually at the same sort of time as well. So it annoys everybody.
No, I get mine like, every 4 months. You get yours every 4 days.
Yeah, every 4 months I get a spell of maybe a week of every day getting a PB. But I mean, I don't think I'll ever be getting the sort of times that you're getting. But then you're right. Like you see people that can run that speed and you're like, that doesn't look, that's no way that's, we're not in the Matrix or something and someone's fiddling with the code.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead because I'm sure you've got kind of like a plan for what this like. But like, I remember when I was doing my first half marathon, and you've done the Edinburgh half, have you?
No, I've only done the full marathon twice.
Well, it's kind of like the same setup as the marathon. So you kind of like, you run effectively the first 10K. And then from that point on, it's a there and back to the finish. And you're running along and you're dying. You're like, this is so hard. I can't believe that I've done this first 10K and I've got to run the same distance again. And then you see someone who's like about to finish. And you're just like, how is this person got legs that are twice as long as me? Is that what it is? But no, they're just that fast. But like now it's kind of in that place where like, obviously, I'm not in a position where I am one of those first people to finish, but there are loads of people that you see like coming the opposite direction. You're like, nah, that's not who I am.
Yeah,
but it is, and it's really cool.
I know what you mean, though. I've only just after the 10K, the Baxter's 10K, and like
where you smashed it.
Yeah, finishing in the top 100, and you can see there's not that many people ahead of you. And especially you know the route, so you know that you can see the other side of the river when you're coming to the finish line, and you're just looking across and think, how am I that far ahead of that number of people? It doesn't feel real. It really doesn't. But I mean, that's a great place to start because no better place to start than with the first half marathon. I didn't realize it started at the same place as it finished. That's news to me. That's good. But that was 2017. If Uncle Lee's numbers are correct, May 2017.
I'm going to take a guess at yes. Like I didn't really, for me, doing that half marathon was going to be like the last time I ever ran in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I didn't really record it as like what date it was. I've probably gone to the website, but I think 17. It was either 17 or 18, something like that. Is about spot on.
And the time, I'm guessing he's done the proper research here, because he's got a time as well, 2 hours 15, which is fairly similar to what I was probably on my first half marathon, if not a lot quicker. But I mean, seeing as your last race was a half marathon as well, it's quite a sizable drop since then. So what really struck you from first half marathon of I'm never running again to then continuing onwards?
So I'm gonna have to correctly, it was 2 hours 19 for my those 4 minutes were probably the most painful 4 minutes of my life, so I don't want them to be forgotten. So well, I don't know. So like for me, I've never really felt completely satisfied with where I've got to in running. I've done so many promises to myself that I'm going to stop. So like the first race that I ever did was a 10K, and it was up the Pentland Hills, which is a terrible idea. And it was called the Tough 10K. Why I decided to do a 10K called the Tough 10K as my first race, I'm not sure. But it was over the Pentland Hills, and I think that was 1 hour 20 that took for my first 10K race. And when I got back, I was just completely dead. I think I slept for an hour from a 10K, which, you know, me and you will both know that is about how long we take now for a nice gentle 10K out.
Yeah.
But that's how much recovery time I needed for it. And then after that, I think that I stopped running for maybe like 3 or 4 months. And then at that point, like I wasn't feeling very good in myself just because I wasn't doing any exercise or something. And I kind of wanted a little bit of a motivator. And so I signed up for the Edinburgh Half Marathon because it's neck downhill. Great. And, you know, I didn't have any training plan that I was following. I didn't know about the concept of a training plan, and completely just winged it as much as I could. I was like, I think I was like, right, if I start off doing like one run a week that's 3K, one that's 5K, and one that's, I think, starting off at about 7K, and then I add 1 kilometer every week, then eventually I get to doing a half marathon. So I did that. I knew nothing about nutrition. I think this is like one of my favorite memories of training for the half marathon was that I had no idea what nutrition to do, but I knew that I wanted some motivation. So I was like, right, if I make it to 11K, I can have a cream egg. So every time it certainly was. So like every time I was doing my long runs, I would take a cream egg with me. Like, thank God it was not a summer training, because that cream egg would have melted everywhere.
That just makes me think of Cool Runnings and the egg, the guy that always has the egg with them.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. I think mine's better though. Cream egg definitely trumps. But you know, as advice to anyone listening to this podcast who is not a runner, a cream egg is really terrible nutrition for a run, unless maybe you're doing an ultra, in which case anything flies. So yeah, I knew like nothing about it, and took on this half marathon, and it was just like the most awful 2 hours 19 minutes of my life. I think the first 5K was maybe quite nice, but after that, I was just really, really struggling. I got blisters so like at the end, well, I didn't have any running shoes to start off with. People say, oh, you can, take up running. You just put your shoes on out the door. Not if you do a half marathon. Make sure you get some shoes that are not going to give you blisters, because at the end, I went to the medical tent to get a plaster and took my shoe off, and like the nurse screamed looking at the size of the blister. It was horrendous. But got through it. And then after that, I was like, never again, not going to do this again. But at the time, I was traveling for work quite a bit. And anyone who travels for work knows that it can be quite a lonely thing to do, sitting in hotel rooms with not much to do. So I think at that point, I started going out for like short runs, nothing quite that long, mainly in London, and realised that it's quite a nice way to explore a city or just anywhere, and just being able to take yourself wherever you want to go and not really be constrained that much. And then I went to a really weird little town somewhere, it was tiny. There was nothing to do, but there was a really beautiful river that was near it. And I went out and I just kept on going. And I ended up doing a half marathon, and actually not in too much different a time to what I did the Edinburgh half in. And I think at that point I was like, actually, this is nice. This is enjoyable. This is what people kind of talk about when they say, oh, you should do running. It's like, it's really good for your mental health, and a massive list of the positive things people will tell you. But I think that's the first time that I thought, actually, I can exactly see where this is coming from.
So did that continue then? Because I obviously I have the first half marathon date, and then the next date that I have on it is your accident. So did you continue then doing events between 2017 and 2020, or was it just casual runs as and when you were traveling?
Yes. So there was I think it was, this feels very true of my personality, and I'm very expected, is that I did that half marathon, and I think I went home and signed up for the Edinburgh full marathon.
As you do, as everyone does, isn't it? Yeah.
So I'm just scrolling back because I started my Instagram account after finishing that, so I can just find out what year that was. So I think that was maybe, well, that was 2018, I think. So Lee nailed it. It was 2017.
Yeah, so 2017 for the half marathon. So if you signed up for the marathon, or if it was Edinburgh Marathon was your first one, that would have been the following year, would it?
2019 was my first marathon.
2019, right? Okay.
Yeah, so I signed up for that, and again, the training was incredibly haphazard.
Did the cream eggs make another appearance?
Oh, they definitely did. They definitely did. But this time, not until kilometer 30. Yeah, I know. But that. So you were telling me about your Port Louis trips.
Yep.
I had a similar experience for my first marathon, but mine was this is terrible. Oh, this is so bad. So bad. So I've done all this training, right? As everyone, if you...
You would hope so. You would hope someone would train.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then the weekend before, my flatmate at the time, who is an absolute idiot, drank... Well, we're not sure. He either it was the touching of the dead adder, or it was the drinking the water out the stream without decontaminating it. Not sure which. But he got very sick. Very, very sick. Couldn't keep anything down, or it was going out the other end, let's say. And
both of those sounded like innuendos, by the way. Touching the adder and drinking.
These were all his words. I don't like to ask too many details about what he does in his spare time. Do you know what? I wish it was innuendos because I don't know if I'll ever forgive him for touching that adder. But yeah, so lo and behold, by the Thursday before, I think the marathon, this was a weird thing. The marathon was on the Saturday.
It is strange. Marathons usually the Sunday, yeah.
Yeah. So the Thursday, I was down in Manchester traveling for work, and oh, it was so bad. I was in the middle of a meeting when suddenly the adder sickness caught me. And I just had to leg it from the meeting. And yeah, so I couldn't keep anything down for the Thursday or the Friday. Now, as you'll know yourself, being coming into the week before a marathon, that is when you should be eating as many carbs, as much pasta, pizza, anything that you can get your hands on. You should be eating as much of that as you possibly can. But instead, what I was doing was vomiting it up or
lovely.
Yeah. I knew that you wanted to hear all these details.
Honestly, it would surprise you the number of DMs that you get ask people poo-related stories, or not normally vomit stories, but I mean, it's going to tick some boxes.
Exactly. So that was my first marathon. I was on the morning of. I thought, I've not eaten in 2 days, and I've not kept anything down. Am I going to do this? I was like, do you know what? If you turn up to the start line, at least you've got that option.
Yeah.
So I turned up, and I'd had breakfast that morning. That was good. And then so I ran the marathon, and my stomach was just in bits the entire time. It was it was horrific. But again, I think that as a trait of, I think, pretty much any runner that has ever gone beyond what they believe themselves capable of doing, there's a lot of determination. And I think that determination managed to get me around that marathon. And it was 4.5 hours, which actually, like, when I think back to the trauma my stomach went through.
Yeah. That's an incredible time, because you would have been incredibly dehydrated as well.
Yeah, so dehydrated. Like when you get those pee charts, like mine was like a stout beer kind of thing. It wasn't good.
Anything darker than the Iron Brew, you're in bad territory.
Exactly.
That honestly is that's over. I think that's over average female marathon time as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen something recently, and it's like the average female time, average male time is very close in that ballpark. So to do it, to be dehydrated, to be very ill, and still get a 4:30 for your first, that's incredible. It shows the power of the cream egg, I suppose.
Power of the cream egg. I know. I really hope that Cadbury's hears this and they sponsor me.
You can hope. I can hope it too. Yeah. So that's 2019. That would have been then May 2019. You may have had a couple of smaller races. I doubt you would have had another marathon before February of 2020.
I've just figured it out. So, right. Okay. So Lee was right. First half was 2017.
Yeah.
First marathon was 2018.
Okay.
I didn't make my Instagram after my first marathon. 2019, I did another one, and that's when I made it. There we go. I've got it.
So there was two. Wow. Were they both Edinburgh marathons?
Both Edinburgh Marathon, because, and this is very important, I didn't have to get up that early for them.
You can roll out of bed. Just go through the start line. Yeah. Helps. It does help as a motivator, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And
sod this flying to another country.
I don't know. You can tell us next week whether you still think that.
I know you've experienced that. This will be my first international, unless I count the going south of the Highlands to go international. But no, February 2020 came around, and like I kind of alluded to, or quite mentioned most of it in the introduction, you had quite a significant accident, which was to the point where you'd broken your ribs, you'd broken your scapula, you'd fractured your spine, you'd punctured your spleen and your lungs. But then also not trying to gloss over that, but then to go 9 months later to running, not only running, but completing an ultra, and not just any ultra. At this point, we've had 3 guests, or potentially 2 guests, depending on how the re-record goes, who have done the Glasgow to Edinburgh and have not had very nice things to say about it. It's pretty tough. So how did you do that? How is that even physically possible?
Wow.
Don't say cream eggs.
I have to say my nutrition has moved on since the cream egg. I like to call it like the cream egg period of my life. So when I had my accident, obviously I was a very broken woman.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I've thought about this and like an awful lot actually, just on a personal level, is I think for me that was like a real motivator in terms of taking things for granted, because I think that, like, a lot of people, they're quite happy to say it. They think, you know, we take our health for granted. But at that point, I think having that accident made me think, actually, you know, sort of just after the accident happened, as in like in the immediate aftermath of it, you know, I was lying on the floor in the snow, and I'd blacked out, and then I came around, and one of the first things I did was try and wiggle my toes. And when I wiggled my toes, I thought, thank fuck, I'm not paralyzed.
Yeah.
But it could have gone, you know, if I'd, you know, hit the thing that sort of caused all the damage at a slightly different angle, if I'd been going slightly faster, you know, there's so many variables that could have been a very, very different outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that at that point, I was like, never take your health for granted. Never assume that tomorrow you're going to be able to do that run that you've got on your training plan or something like that, or, you know, got all these big dreams of things that we'd like to do, and that is not always going to happen. So make the most of the opportunities that you do have. And I think for me, that was you know, I'm so lucky that I am able to walk, that I don't need any support for breathing or living. Make the most of that, see what you can do, see where your body can take you. And obviously it was also the year of the pandemic, which we're all very familiar with. And so it was also quite a nice opportunity to be able to get outside and actually just be able to be out for as long as possible. So the two things kind of came hand in hand. So yeah.
How long did you spend in hospital then?
So I was in intensive care for a week. And then after that, I had to hang around this. I'm going to say this, and it sounds really weird to say. I had to hang around in France for a while because, so the accident happened in France, and because of the punctured lung, I couldn't fly.
Yeah.
So I had to, you know, go through all of these things with the medical insurance and stuff, them trying to figure out how for me to get home. But yeah, so it was awful first week in hospital. But then after that, I did recover very quickly given the injuries that I had, and the physio and the doctors think that it's actually because of the running that I've been doing beforehand that meant that my body was kind of used to recovering much quicker than, you know,
people who then if you didn't have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And I was like, yay, running.
So that must have been then to have them say that must have then also, as well as your mental resilience of knowing, well, at least I'm not paralyzed. Like you said, it could have gone
Yeah.
so much worse, to then decide you're going to run an ultra. But not only run an ultra, but 9 months after the accident. But then you take off the time for rehabilitation, for recovery, and we both know that a normal marathon sort of training program is about 16 weeks if you're normal and not a weirdo like me.
Yeah.
So then you've got ultra training is a lot longer.
Yeah.
How just that's mind blowing that you can do that.
So I think, what was it actually? So I think it was a month, maybe. It was a month before I could do anything other than walk. And then it was maybe, there was a month where I was starting to be able to get back. I wasn't allowed to run or anything because of the broken back. I couldn't put any weight. I couldn't do anything weight bearing. But I was signed off work, and so, like all normal people, I was like, oh, time to go to the gym. So I used like the sitting bikes and stuff just to kind of get that base fitness back. And then there was a lot of like run, walking, for that must have been maybe another month. But I think that it's one of these things where you do have to go through pain to improve. But I think that the sort of that mental motivation kind of really helped in that it was kind of like it was more than just going out for a run and just going out for this long distance. It was, proving something, and just being like, I can do this. This is great. I want more.
And had you signed up for Glasgow to Edinburgh quite soon after the accident as something to aim towards?
Actually, no. So, because it was the pandemic year, I was originally just looking for a marathon to sign up to, but everything was getting cancelled.
Yeah.
So I was like, what is going to have very few people signing up to it? An ultra marathon from Glasgow to Edinburgh. No one's going to want to do that. So I think I signed up to it I think it might have been June or something like that, because I thought, oh, maybe by October, like it's likely to actually go ahead. Because that, I think, it was, well, it's just happened for this year. So I think it must have been about the same time then.
So that would have been 16 weeks then, around about 16 weeks.
16 weeks, yeah. Wow.
Crazy.
When you put it like that, that's really cool.
Yeah, it is because like any ultra runner will testify that 16 weeks is maybe not enough time to be training for an ultra, but you did it. You got yourself over to Glasgow in the early hours and got back to Edinburgh. And got
one of the fun things about it was that it was cancelled. So there wasn't actually the event on. So the cons were definitely there was going to be no support on course. There would be no one else to really run with. The positives was that I got to stay in bed for about 3 hours longer. So, well,
Did they still give you a medal though? If you
no,
proved you'd done it. So you don't even have that massive like dinner plate size medal.
Well, my flatmate, she knitted me a medal.
Oh,
Which was very cute.
some might say that's better.
They might do, but I have to tell you this story, right? Because when we're talking about like inspirational people, so there was a couple of people that I met on the course who had decided to sign up. Well, who'd signed up and decided to do it anyway. So I wasn't the only person who was out there on the day doing it. And I was running along, and there was this guy who was kind of like, without wanting to sort of slag him off in any way, he didn't look like he was finding running easy, and we were about 30 kilometers in or something like that. But I saw him, and he had a big backpack on, and he had what looked like a race number on his shorts. So because I put my race number on as well, and I was eyeing him up, and I was like, I think that he's doing this as well. So I kind of like ran up to him, like trying to like look around a bit slyly, so it wasn't too obvious that I was trying to like eye up that number and see if it said Glasgow to Edinburgh Ultra. Right enough, yeah, it did. And I was like, oh, so you're doing this too? And he was like, yeah, well, I've done it for the last 10 years. And then I had to skip it because I've just had a hip replacement. But I thought this year I'm going to do it. And so this guy, not only having done it so many times, but he 1 year before had a hip replacement, and he was still about to run it. And I just thought, that is mental. That was so cool that he was there to do that.
That is inspirational, but I would still say that your long list of injuries, it maybe surpasses a hip replacement a little bit, But that's like, I mean, it's still no 100-meter sprint to overcome a replacement like that as well, and still smash out a casual Glasgow to Edinburgh. Yeah. But we're going to flash forward now, though, because you've not really been focusing on ultras so much since then, have you? Have you done any more before we had to jump onto like marathons again?
Yeah, so I got a bit put off by the ultras, I'm not going to lie.
I did not getting a medal. Was that enough to put you off?
That was it. So I see like a lot of people online, you'll see yourself, they're really into ultras, and I find that really, really great that they do enjoy it. But for me, I found I didn't enjoy the training for an ultra. Yeah. I thought that it was too much of my life, to be honest. I love running, but I don't want to be defined by it. And I found that training for an ultra requires you to. And I have done another one since, because, I'm seeing all the people out there enjoying it, and I'm like, I want to, I'd love to be able to enjoy that too, but I don't think it's for me, to be honest.
It's not in your Instagram handle. So, I mean, we all know that Instagrammers that have it in their handles are serious about it.
Well, exactly. If you ever see that change, we can do another recording of the podcast.
If that ever changes, Saerah, I'll send help. Send help. So we're flash forward though, because this is a good opportunity. Bob Barrell, the Kilsyth runner, he's had a suggestion of things to tackle with like what you would class yourself as an everyday runner as well, and it's how you improve. So my next significant milestone on your list, but you would have been doing training and marathons and half marathons, 10Ks in between 2020 and then 2022, which is where 2022 is your Edinburgh Marathon, where you achieved your Boston qualifier time. Not that I'm have to tell you that, but you got your Boston qualifier time. And something that Bob mentioned was working, or at least speaking to real everyday runners and finding out how they've progressed and how they've got faster. So from marathon 1 and 2, and then having done ultra and all the recovery, how did you then up your game to progress to what is not an insignificant qualifier time to achieve?
Oh, many years of consistent effort, I think, is probably one of the key ones. I think, one of the things that you maybe don't have in your list from Lee is all of the times I failed to get a Boston qualifier.
We're not going to talk about them.
Well, but I think that's, they're important too, aren't they?
Because yeah, they are.
They're the ones where you've put in the effort and you don't get the goal, and you've got a choice at that point, don't you? You can say, well, I'm not good enough, or you can say, well, I'm not good enough now. Let's try again. Let's go again. Let's see what we've learned from this training block and how we can change it the next time.
How close had you got prior to the Edinburgh effort?
2 minutes, Steve. 2 minutes.
Oh.
2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was, I guess it was a little bit brutal because, you know, a marathon training block is for many people 16 weeks. It was for me. 16 weeks for 2 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. But to achieve 2 minutes, having spoken with Omar, so he didn't get he was so close to getting his I think it was sub 3. But like he said, to get that 2 minutes over that length of distance, it's still a lot of effort to put in to get that 2 minutes down. But it didn't scare you off. It just, by the sounds of it, drove you to push even harder still.
Yeah, it's like it's within reach. You know that you're capable, and so many things happen on the day of a race, don't they? You know yourself. Sometimes you want to shit yourself. Sometimes the courses, we all believe, a little bit longer than they say it is.
And sometimes the heat in Edinburgh is tropical.
I know, right? Oh yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. So like there's so many factors, and I guess you're saying kind of what's the everyday runner do to improve. I think that one of the things is not being scared to be in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds a bit weird, but I think for me, when I started training, the idea of getting my heart rate high was terrifying, right? It doesn't feel good. You feel sometimes nauseous, your heart's racing, you're sweating, you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable position out of choice.
Yeah.
That's mental. But, you know, realizing that you can do that and you're not actually going to die is, I think, for me, was quite an important realization that you can do that. And I guess that's kind of one of the things is I try and remember when I am like crying as I do intervals.
But you brought in intervals and speed sessions and all the kind of stuff that is recommended.
Yes. So, I mean, I really could talk about this for probably a very long time, Steve. You let me know when to stop. So I think that I'm quite a big fan of this 60. Is it? Oh, I'm going to get this wrong now, aren't I? Is it 60-40 or 80-20?
It's either 80-20 or 60-40, but I mean, either way works.
But the main bit being that the majority of your running is done at a really slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever slow means for you. And then the rest of it, you're absolutely beasting it. But I think that made a very big difference because it means that you are able to put in that effort for the hard bit because you're allowing yourself to recover. And I think that it's important kind of if you're taking up one of these training styles, and there are different ones out there, but this is the one that works for me, is that you understand why you're doing each of your training sessions so you can commit to it. So things like when you're doing your easy run, it is very hard to actually easy run if you don't understand what the purpose is, because you're like, well, I could go faster. Or you see someone and you're like, oh, I don't want to look like a slow runner.
Yeah.
But if you're like, oh, I'm doing a slow run because I'm letting myself work harder for that hard run, then it actually makes it like it makes sense, and you're like, yes, I can take this one easy, and actually that's the thing that's going to make me go faster, and I understand why that's happening. So I think that not only choosing a style of training plan to follow, but understanding what the purpose in all of those different aspects is, and so you're able to follow them.
That really does come with experience, doesn't it? Because I think I've certainly been in that position where I've said I've gone for an easy run and I've got a PB, but that was that was Steve, where it was not I didn't have an understanding of what an easy run really was, so I was just going out for a run.
Oh,
and like you say,
you'd do that PB again, wouldn't you?
I would. It's been blown out of the water by probably significantly now because I've started doing it correctly, where you go long and slow and then you do short and quick.
Yeah.
And it does help a massive amount. And it probably sounds a bit preachy when we talk about that side of things to anyone that's maybe not as experienced or hasn't gone through as many marathons as you have now, or as I'm working towards, to go, oh, it maybe just works for them, but I'm just going to do me. It does help. It helps a lot. I mean,
I think, like if anyone's doubting it, try it for one training block. And if you don't like it still, then fair enough. But I would be very shocked if it didn't work out for you.
yeah, go back to sprinting an easy session. But you achieved your and as I got there as well, the heat of 2020 at Edinburgh Marathon was not cold. It was very warm. It was very unpleasant.
It wasn't. Oh, I'm getting flashbacks, Steve.
But brutal, and getting a Boston qualifier as well, where at maybe another event in autumn it would have been potentially easier to achieve. You did it in probably one of the hottest temperatures Edinburgh Marathons had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your race photos kind of show how happy you were.
I wanted to die with joy. It was so good.
But then not only that, the same year you went to the London Marathon, and was it even faster still, or was it on par with Edinburgh?
I think it was like bang on. I think the London Marathon was interesting because I was in training for the second ultra that I was doing, which this is when on a whim I was like, oh, maybe ultras actually are fun.
Said nobody ever.
Everyone knows that ultras are just an excuse for a picnic and there's nothing else for it. But yeah, so London Marathon was, I signed up because with my Boston qualifier, I also had a good for age with London.
Yeah.
And anyone who's ever entered the ballot for London will know how hard it is to get a place in London. So I was like, do you know what? I may never be this fast again. I'm going to do it. So
and you did do it.
I did. And it was terrible, Steve. I was not in a position to do a good pace at London. Like normally, well, we've talked about this. I think it was before you started recording about like carb loading and good nutrition and make sure you practice what you're running. I was like, I don't really care. I'm here for fun. I'm not here to, do anything. I've got my Boston qualifier. So like the day before, like I was having some drinks. I had a curry, which is like the worst thing that anyone would ever suggest to you. A really spicy curry. I went to bed late. I hadn't planned my stuff out for the next day. Like I did, for all intents and purposes, everything wrong. But I think that the pressure was gone. The pressure for Boston that I put on myself, like it was all self-inflicted pressure, but that was all gone. And I was like, I'm going to have the best time. I'm going to enjoy it. And like right enough, got there and just like, I went out and I was like, I feel good. I feel really good. Well, I might as well give it a go. Like, let's see what happens. And I think anyone that you've had on the podcast before that has talked about it, they'll say how great the crowds are in London.
Yeah.
So like, in like in Edinburgh, you have people who are cheering at the end, right? In London, it's like people deep the whole way around. I've never experienced anything like it. Anyone who has a chance to do London Marathon, I really think it was like one of the best marathon experiences I've ever had. And I think that the crowds, the lack of pressure, it was just brilliant.
I mean, not to poo-poo Edinburgh, but you're right. After maybe the start and the midpoint, it is, other than the other runners, it's what are people? Because there's this non-existent. And then everyone does say how much the party vibe, the atmosphere, the carnival nature of London carries you. It's almost like that. I'm not big on football, so I can't tell you how many players there are, but it's like the 12th player, isn't it? The crowd or the extra man on the field can lift you up and help you to achieve crazy things.
Yeah. It's a very, very cool city to run in. It's great people. It's very well organized. So, Steve, when you get your Good age. At Amsterdam, you can sign up too.
I hope nobody's getting their hopes up with this. I'm certainly trying not to. Again, this will be so far in the future at this point. Everyone
You
will
can just
know my
edit this
heart.
bit out, can't
I
you?
could, yeah, I could. I'm not gonna. I hate editing. Your London time was this is from Uncle Lee, 3 hours and 27 minutes. For having done everything wrong on the lead up to it in respect to the night before and the morning of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
That's depressing, Saerah.
It was. It was. I felt. Do you know what? I felt really jammy. I was like, I don't deserve that.
The crowd has a lot to play. Has a lot there.
They definitely do. They definitely do, and it was really cool actually. There's one bit where, like, because it's the London Marathon, right? So you've got like the proper elites. Like, again, I'm not poo-pooing anyone from Edinburgh Marathon, and I would absolutely die to have their like 2 hours or whatever winning time. But in London, you're getting the ones who are finishing in like 2 hours 10, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you get to see them running, and that is so cool.
The insanely quick whippets of the people. But I mean, as of today, the men's record has been broken at Chicago.
Has it?
It has, yes. It's down to like now, without checking my phone, I'm pretty sure it's like 2 hours and 24 seconds now.
Was it? Who was it?
Now I'm gonna have to look this up now. I got sent it just before we hit record. It was so 2 hours and 35 seconds. And he's only 23.
He's no longer the world record holder. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy. And the female record was only just broken at Berlin just a few weeks ago, and it wasn't broken today, but it was the second fastest female time of all time.
Wow.
It's insane, isn't it? That's when I'm talking about things not seeming like they're real. When a normal person talks about marathon running and the pace that they have to run to achieve that end goal, it's not just superhuman. It's beyond that. I don't know what the correct phrase would be, but it is like someone's gone in and changed the source code. It's just
well, I just think so I can't remember what was your first marathon was it 4? I've forgotten. 4. Was it 5?
The time when I came across the line was 4:31, and I was disappointed by the 1 minute. But then, in reality, because I hadn't waited for my time to come in on the phone, it was 4:29. Yeah,
was it? That's hilarious.
So I wanted 4:30.
Okay, so that's pretty much bang on what my first marathon was as well. And you're thinking these people could run two marathons in that time.
Yeah, exactly. Even my half marathon time is not too far off what they're running a full marathon in, and it's crazy. It is so insane. But you're getting up there yourself, because we flash forward then to Boston in April of 2023, and to not only get to Boston with your Boston qualifier. Am I right in thinking this is still your PB? You haven't broken it since?
Yeah.
So it's 3 hours, 24 minutes and 16 seconds, because the 16 seconds make all the difference.
They certainly do.
How was it?
The city was mental. It was like nothing I've experienced before. So I think like when I'm telling people about it, the bit that I remember is what the city was like. So like when you land on the plane, or from the plane, like all of the screens that you have in the airport that normally are like, oh, you could get a Greg's sausage roll. They're like, welcome marathon runners. So like even from when you land, it's about the marathon. And then there's like the city is just covered in banners for the marathon. There's churches that are doing prayer services for the marathon runners. Like the whole city is a party for the marathon. They've got So it is a national holiday, but they call it like Marathon Monday. They've got like a TV channel to talk about like the weather forecast for the marathon, which is insane because when you do the Edinburgh Marathon, the only reason, like, unless you're a runner, the only reason you know it's happening is because you're trying to drive down a road and it says it's shut.
Yeah, it's closed, and you're like, how inconsiderate is it that they're closing this road?
Well, no, but this is like everyone's out there cheering. So there's like some people that I like a company that I work with that is based in Boston, and they found out that I was running the marathon, and they were like, we all go out to cheer, and none of them are runners. They're all there to celebrate, which is really like, it's so cool that there's a city that is that enthusiastic. Do
you think that's because they all have a day off and they're all bladdered though?
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, I would be into running too, even if I wasn't.
Americans are very, very passionate about sport generally and getting behind people, whether they're into that sport themselves or not, though. But then other people have said have either done Boston or New York or Chicago. It doesn't still feel quite similar to London, does it? It's a party, but it's not a party in the same respect.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, without, like, I feel I want to be the person who says Boston was the best experience of my life, but it wasn't. London was the best running, because there are people on the course, but for the most part, they're condensed in two places. One is at the finish, and one is at I think it's the Welmsey Scream Tunnel, which I didn't realise wasn't actually a tunnel. I was like running along the course, like waiting to go through this tunnel, and there was no tunnel. There was just people screaming at me.
So it's like Edinburgh, but in a much bigger, grander scale of here's some people and here's some people.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it was better than Edinburgh. You'll know yourself that Edinburgh has got like a long, long way to go where you're not running with anyone. But the difference was that because it's America, it's straight. So you can see how far a marathon is.
Is that I had this discussion with, I can't remember, just the other day, and that was something that maybe puts me off slightly. Maybe it was Patrick actually, and it was running in a marathon in America because of the grid systems and because of the way that they are. That to me would be torturous, knowing that you've got this whole avenue to run and you have to add in an odd turn or something so you don't go insane of, I've got that, how far to go?
Oh, and just wait until you get to a hill where you can see the hill coming because of like all the people going up, and you're just like, you're going and you're like, I know that I'm about to hit that. Whereas at least like in Scotland, you like, it's hidden from the trees and things.
What's that Leonardo DiCaprio film? Inception. That's, as soon as you said they're running up a hill, I'm thinking Inception. Is it like that? But to have that as your PB, could you realistically see yourself going faster? It's like you said, you can always feel like I can do more. I can beat that. Do you feel you can go faster still?
I think so. So, like, at the moment, I'm focusing on the half marathon, but realistically, that's with like the overall goal of improving the marathon. I think a sub 3:15 probably is in me, but you know, at the moment that feels like a pipe dream. But a sub 3:30 was once a pipe dream, wasn't it? Like,
exactly. You've got that experience now for training purposes. It then comes down to the rest of it, which is again not a small percentage of having the right conditions on the day, feeling yourself on the day as well. There could be a whole multitude of things that could slightly damage that goal. It's just picking the right place to do it.
Yeah, you tell me if Amsterdam's the one.
The digest I got from Amsterdam last year from my brother ran it was, it's great, it's a flat route, but every little bridge feels like a mountain.
Oh,
Um,
I reckon that's because you're going faster overall because it is so flat that you're
I've,
just like,
well, I'm not sure. I will. I'll let you know as soon as I've done it. Um, I I'm in some respects the flatness of it is scaring me because I'm used to running with elevation. I'm used to running with hills. I'm used to having something to
yeah,
break up the monotony of a flat
yeah,
course. Um, Edinburgh has got a bit of downhill. It's got a lot of flat, but it does have some undulations. Loch Ness had a lot of undulations, a lot of downhill, but a lot of uphill. So this will be my first proper like flat marathon where you could really say it's going to be a mental struggle. Sure, I might have
yeah.
the physicality of being able to do well in advance of what my aim is, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's getting the right location. And as much as Loch Ness has its ups and downs, it is a very fast course as well. So I
Yeah.
know that I could run faster at Loch Ness. So I hope by this point we'll know, but I hope by that I can run faster than I aiming to in
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
I guess at least, with a flat course, you can get a pacing strategy a little bit easier
Yeah,
because you're not having to be like, right, okay, so how much effort is a hill in comparison to like how much time it's going to win or lose me? So I
that's it.
guess it's
If I get
like,
in a nice momentum and just continue
yeah,
at that pace, yeah. So then, yeah, like you say, then you're focusing on half marathons. Now, this is where Uncle Lee's timings finished because he had your PB down as May this year at the Edinburgh Half Marathon, which was a very, very good time. But you have since beaten it very recently at the Scottish Half Marathon, a very similar course because it is kind of a lot of the same sort of route, isn't it?
hmm I think, yeah. So the Scottish half goes, I think it's 6 kilometers before it joins up with pretty much the Edinburgh half route.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so yeah, a stretch of the coast that I'm very, very familiar with now.
Yes. It must be a common training ground as well for you now that you know and you're so close to it. You must go out there and think, where can I take off? A couple of seconds here, a couple of seconds there, because you're down at 1 hour and 32 minutes.
Yeah. So again, that feels mental, doesn't it? Like I
That's
almost
scary
even want
fast.
to, I don't want to say it because that feels like that's scary cases.
What's if you're focusing on your half? What's your goal?
um, So I would love a sub 130. I
Yeah.
think that like I don't know why we're all obsessed with round numbers, but a sub 130 would be very nice. And between us and whoever else is listening, there's like that little bit of me that's like looking at a sub 128 because that gets you a championship place in London Marathon. And wouldn't that be sweet?
That
Like
would be
so sweet.
amazing. That would be
But
amazing.
4 minutes in a half marathon is that's quite a lot, isn't I mean, I'm saying this, I know that you're probably gonna smash like 4 minutes out any minute. Like you're probably gonna
Uh,
smash out the 4 minute
I took
PB in
4 minutes off
like,
my 10K and I could go faster
yeah,
again.
exactly. But like when you're kind of like, there comes a point where you naturally reach a plateau, right? Because
Yes, yes.
you have to. So 4 minutes feels like a monster amount of time to take off, but it
Mm.
also doesn't feel unachievable.
You almost have to change your work life balance to overcome that plateau then
Yeah,
where it
yeah.
becomes less of a hobby and more of a you have to dedicate a lot more time to achieve the sub 128 which
Oh yeah.
but at least if you're aiming for a 128 that's it's 4 minutes but then aiming for that goal could easily get you the sub 130.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's no point in not going for a good goal, right? Yeah,
Correct.
like
Yeah.
the worst thing that happens is you don't get it.
Yeah, and there's always, and you've had that throughout the whole conversation and through everything we've talked about. You've had that mental resilience to just keep getting faster and faster and faster, and knowing that you can go faster in yourself.
hmm Well, we will see. But yeah, there's always there's always there's always a point in trying, and I think as long as we don't define ourselves by what our time is, and more define it by the amount of effort we put in to get what we want, then I think that's an absolutely fine kind of goal to be aiming for.
Great. I think that's been really good. I mean, so you got your goals for half marathon, you got your goals for marathon. Do you have events that you're aiming towards in the future? Are there specific events that you would like to tick off? And do you want to do the majors? Or are you just quite happy to continue to chip away at these times, no matter where the events might be?
I think in terms of like where to tick off the times, I don't really have any. But have I told you about the Paris Olympic Marathon?
You did. You told me about the app, didn't you? You said you download the app and you can get potentially into. Yeah, you. I think you were the one that told me about that originally.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
So right. So anyway, super excited. It's basically like a glorified ballot, right? I could go into a lot of detail. I was at so it was EH3 Miners, like Chris's group that he runs, and I was at the pub with them, and it felt like I was being sponsored by the Paris Olympics. The amount that I was trying to sell this app to everyone, I was so excited by it. But so you sign up to the app, you do different challenges, and then you pretty much get put into a ballot to run in the mass participation Paris Olympics. And I was quite lucky that I signed up quite early, so I have now got a place. So that's kind of like one that I'm really looking forward to, but I'm not going to race that one because it starts at 9:00 at night. And it's the first time the Olympics has ever done a mass participation marathon. That is a marathon to be savoured and not to be it's
a memory maker more than a goal breaker. Exactly.
But other than that, I don't actually have anything that I'm signed up to at the minute. I think what I'm going to do is over winter focus on trying to actually do some speed work. Yeah. I don't like that I've now got this recorded that I said that I was going to do that. But yeah, so I'm going to focus on some speed work, and then come the start of next year, start working on that half marathon again, hopefully with that speed work behind my back, so that I can start training at those faster paces that I'll need to get down to the sub 1:30.
Bearing in mind where you told me about the app was at the Inverness half marathon this year.
Was it? Right.
It was. I got my PB wearing the kilt while having COVID. And 2 years running, we bumped into each other. I think without planning, we bumped into each other at the podium getting a photo taken.
Oh yeah, right enough.
Are you coming back up for it? Because we both know how quick that course can be.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because the profile isn't that kind.
No.
But because you get most of your elevation in the first 6 kilometers or something, it's a pretty brutal start.
You start off fairly flat, you then have a very, very small rise as you come around the bridge to then go back on yourself. As soon as you hit that on that Doors Road, you've got to go up that what they do call it the Puke Hill or something like that.
Yeah, it's very accurate. But as long as you don't destroy yourself on that, it is a really quick course, isn't it?
It is a really quick course. I actually passed quite a lot of people going up that hill in the kilt and got a lot of abuse shouted at me.
I bet they loved seeing that, didn't they?
Yeah, a lot of people hated that. Yeah. But then you're right, the course gradient at that point, it's like you almost get a third into it, and then you've got this horrible rise, which continually goes up until you get to the secondary school. And then you've got a small amount of respite, I suppose, from it. It goes flat again. You've got a little kicker, and then you're downhill to flat again. So as long as you're sensible about it, it is and Jace, the Edinburgh runner, he came up this year as well, and absolutely demolished his PB at it as well. So I mean, there's proof throughout the field. Other people come from a long distance, and it's the same with the Baxter's 10K. It's the same course but in reverse. You're mostly going downhill. People come a long way to run PBs there. So That'll be good. That'll be great. We won't say where we're going to be at what times because we'll end up bumping into each other again. But Uncle Lee is going to be there.
He hasn't told me that.
Well, maybe I've just let the cat out of the bag, but he did mention it on Friday. He mentioned it on Friday.
Right, sweet, cool.
So we'll have to have a little social get together. And being that we've just launched the cult, I'm sure there will be a little bit of a catch up there. So otherwise, what else is on the bucket list before we finish off for your running or anything else sports related?
Oh, anything else on the bucket list? I don't actually think so. I think I like this idea of doing more international marathons just because they take you to places that you wouldn't otherwise bother going.
Would that then be because you're so quick getting good for age at the majors and getting the 6-star finisher before it becomes like a crazy 8 to 10-star finisher? Or would that be like...
make a good point. Maybe I should.
yeah, do it before it becomes a massive octopus of a challenge. Or would it be events like the one that, again, Lee did, although he did the half marathon, but like the Midnight Sun Marathon?
Yeah, I think that sounds like the World Majors is really cool. But I think that it would be much nicer to go to these places and just see some really cool places and kind of have running almost as your excuse for being there. Yeah. So that Midnight Marathon, that looks absolutely like incredible to do. But even ones that's just like, well, okay, I have been slagging off ultras, right? But there's some really nice looking mountain ultras like across like different islands and things like that. But like, yeah, I can see those and I'll be like, yeah, that looks really nice to do.
And you're still got age on your side as well to smash out your goals, and then as you get towards Uncle Lee's sort of age of really appreciate ultras and just gradually work your way into them.
We can get him the running Zimmer frame for his
well, his arm's running out of space to put medal tattoos on, so someone has to take over for him.
Oh dear.
Well, I mean, at that point, I'll draw a line under it. But that's been amazing, Saerah, to have you on, and it's such a varied chat to have your whole story there, and the coming back from being physically broken to being a glitch in the matrix. To use that reference once again, it's been truly inspiring, I think, for a lot of people listening.
Well, thank you for having me on. That was good fun.
And we'll have to have you back as well once we get your time down a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Cool.
What a story and what a lady. I'm lucky enough to be able to call Saerah a friend. But when Lee, Uncle Lee, good old Uncle Lee, sent over the mini bio on Saerah's behalf because she wasn't quite sure what to put down before the recording, I was honestly blown away by the position she found herself in with the sledging accident to where she is today. She's such an inspiration, and that is such an inspirational story to prove that no matter what life throws at you, there's always a way to overcome it and move forward if you have the right mindset and drive. Be sure to let us know what you thought of the conversation and give Saerah a follow if you want to see more of the amazing strides she makes on a daily basis, getting faster and faster at all the events that she demolishes. Next up, we have the man who is number one for many of the running community's list of supportive and motivational people to be around or connected with for episode 8, with the previous guest to the Press, Play and Run podcasts, Bob the Kilsyth runner Burrell. This will be the first non-pre-recorded episode I'll have done in a while, set me up nicely to knock the final 3 episodes out the park. So I'm a little bit nervous actually about getting back into doing interviews live, or at least close to the release date, and everything that goes into making sure the episode is top notch. Remember to let me know who you would like me to shout out and show appreciation to in the next episode, either in the Instagram story that I'll be putting up or dropping into the DMs. If you want to be able to follow us though, and all the general sort of ideas, I know I covered a little bit at the beginning, but you can follow us at the Point 99 podcast on both Instagram and Facebook. If you want to follow me, I am Mr_Steve_runs, but drop into the DMs. As I say, let us know what you're thinking. If you want to check out the website, it's thepoint99podcast.com. We have links to Spotify. We have embedded players for all the episodes. We have a little bit more information about the show, about me, and we also have links to the merchandise. You can also use the contact form there, which will drop into our emails, but you can also just drop us an email at thepoint99podcast@gmail.com. But that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. And no matter what you get up to between now and episode 8, whatever you've got on the cards for this weekend or the week ahead, I hope you stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you will hear from me soon.